Hello from Pokradec, Albania. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my cost breakdown of seeing a GI doctor in Tirana. I'm going to share the cost of all the testing and the whole experience. And I also did a comparison of what that may have cost in the United States. And of course, I made a spreadsheet, so I'll be sharing that with you as well. All right, so let's just get to the spreadsheet so I can show you what I spent, and I'll tell you a little bit about the experience. So over the last few months, I've been having some pretty severe stomach pain, and I started to suspect that maybe I had a peptic ulcer, which is a stomach ulcer, due to using way too much ibuprofen. Long story short, that is true. That is what we found out. But I went to the hospital here in Pokradec, and I went to the urgent care, and they gave me an antacid, but they couldn't do any testing because that wasn't considered an emergency. So they referred me out to a specialist. Now, the specialist that they referred me to, I attempted to go to, and it was a really unpleasant experience, and I believe it was through the free clinic here. And it was very hard to navigate the system, and I decided not to pursue that doctor because if it is the free clinic, then I didn't want to be taking up resources from the people that really needed it. So instead, I found a private doctor in Tirana, which is a very nice clinic, potentially one of the best, if not the best, in the country. And the experience that I had there was just top-notch. It was an excellent experience. I called them one day, and they basically were able to get me in right away. They asked me when I wanted to come in, but I wasn't able to get in until the following week, so I scheduled it under a week out. So I thought that was pretty amazing that I was able to just call a specialist and get in immediately, and a really high quality facility as well. Now in the United States, and I know this from my experience, if I wanted to see a GI doctor, if I thought I had an ulcer, and I have actually dealt with similar issues in the US, I would call my primary care doctor first. I would have to go in and see him, tell him my issues, and ask for a referral. And in my experience, what they will do first is make me take a month of medication and then come back and tell them, hey, I'm still having this issue. Can I please get that referral? And then I'll get the referral to the specialist. And then I make an appointment with the specialist. And in my area, typically there was a 3-4 month wait to get in. And then you get in to see you have your consultation. At which point they're going to probably do lab tests, maybe order some other medications to try, and I would suspect that at that point they'd probably order an ultrasound. And then you have to schedule a separate appointment typically to get that done. Maybe they do some in-house, maybe not. Depends on the facility. And then you have a follow-up appointment with your GI doctor, and then, the ultrasound may not show anything, so then they would schedule the next test on the list, which would be the scope. I'm kind of going through this process based on the diagnosis that I received. So then once you would need a separate appointment for the scope, the endoscope, where they put the camera down to take a look at your stomach. And then you would need a follow-up appointment to hear the results and get your treatment plan. So you're talking lots of appointments and several months worth of back and forth to the doctor, and a lot of pain in the meantime. Your problem could potentially be getting worse in that time. Here I was able to just make a phone call the GI doctor that I wanted to see, and schedule and get in right away. They told me not to eat before my appointment, because if they're going to suggest that I do any testing, they're going to do it all same day and in-house, and that's what ended up happening. So I went in, I saw my doctor. It was a very comfortable office, and I described my issues. She asked really good probing questions. She took her time with me. She wasn't in a rush. She asked all the right questions. And based on what I told her, she ordered a comprehensive blood test, a full abdominal ultrasound, not like one, in the US, they might order one area, and then you go see your doctor. If they didn't find anything, then they order another area. And this is back and forth bullshit that I just got so tired of in the US. Anyway, so she ordered the blood test, full abdominal ultrasound, and the endoscope, and they did it all same day. So they started with the ultrasound. The doctor did the ultrasound herself, and she gave me real-time results. and they found nothing, which was great. So the ultrasound is used to rule out a lot of other things. And so that was nice to know. I didn't suspect that any of those things were an issue, but it was nice to know first that she didn't find anything. They did a very comprehensive blood test. I don't actually have the list of everything with me. That might be a different video, but it was a super comprehensive blood test. And again, that was just used to rule out other things. And then finally, we did the endoscope, which involved anesthesia. So I was put to sleep for the scope. And I believe the process only took a few minutes. I don't think it took very long. And they let me know beforehand what the total cost of these things would be. So they didn't just spring it on me at the end. They let me opt in or out of any of these things. But I wanted to go ahead and get everything just to so that we could get a solid diagnosis. So they did the scope, and it's my understanding that it only took a few minutes, and then they woke me up, walked me out to the waiting room, and Craig and I sat there for about an hour waiting for all the results to come in. And it was my understanding that the thing that we waited on the longest was the blood test. But I'm glad that we had to wait a while because I needed about an hour to kind of come back down to earth and be coherent again. And they let me know ahead of time that if they felt they needed to do a biopsy during the scope, that they would do a biopsy, and they let me know what the additional cost of that would be. And they ended up doing the biopsy. And then after, we waited for about an hour, we went in, we saw the doctor. She told us our findings, gave me the treatment plan, the medications, and answered a whole bunch of questions I had about, how to treat it, what to eat, all these things, what to expect as far as the prognosis. And she was just very thorough, very helpful, and it was a really great experience. One funny thing I will say that's a little odd is so during that follow-up meeting, she showed me the biopsy in a little jar. She kind of shook it up so it would whirl around, and then she put it in an envelope, sealed it, and handed it to me to take to the lab. So I had to take that to a separate lab. They were able to do the blood test in-house, but the biopsy needed to go to a separate lab, and they don't transport it. So I had to transport my own biopsy to the lab. But anyway, so now I'm going to show you my cost breakdown and also my cost comparison. Boop. All right, here is my spreadsheet. I can keep myself a little bigger today. And we're going to float. All right, so I will just start with this. These are the tests that I got and the medications that I was prescribed. And I put this cost down here too because I was talking to a friend about my costs. And she shared with me what she paid for a colonoscopy in the US. And I just thought that was really interesting information to include as well. But anyway, so my GI doctor, the consult, I don't have a full breakdown of what each individual test costs, and I apologize for that. But the total cost of the appointment and all the testing, the ultrasound, the comprehensive blood test, and the scope was 306 euros, and that converts to $356. And then I do know that the separate cost, this is one separate cost that I did remember, the biopsy was an additional 30 euros or $34.93. Now the biopsy lab fee was kind of high. When I took that to the lab, it cost an additional 75 euros, which is $87.32. All the medication prescribed me these 3 medications. I don't know the individual cost of them, but the total cost was 109 euros or $126.91. So my total cost was 520 euros or $605.44. So I think that is really good, especially when I did this cost comparison, especially for 2 reasons. Not only is the cost very low, but this was one appointment, 1 day of my time. This is what I estimated that it might cost in the United States if you were paying out of pocket. You'd have to see your primary care doctor first. That would average $190. Get 1 month of medication, $92. Primary care follow-up, $190. And then they'd finally give you the referral to the GI doctor. That could cost on average $355 for a consultation. If they did a comprehensive blood test like what I received, that could be kind of pricey. That might average $620. A full abdominal ultrasound like I received could cost $330. Could cost more, really, because I mean, a lot of times it costs somewhere around $100 per area. I mean, it's whatever. It depends where you go and if they're doing them in-house and all those types of things. And then you'd have your follow-up appointment to talk about the results of your ultrasound and your lab tests, and that would probably cost about $140. And then if they didn't find anything wrong, they might then order the endoscope test. And the range on that I found to be between $986 to $2,016, which would average about $1,500. And the additional cost for the biopsy would be between $300 and $700, or maybe an average of $500. And then, of course, after that test, you would need a follow-up appointment, which would maybe average about $140. Now, the medications I did find were on average cheaper in the U.S. This pantoprazole, if you bought the brand version, it cost $934. But let's face it, most people are probably going to get the generic version, which came to about $20.70. These other two medications, they don't have these exact ones in the US, but they do have antacids and B6 supplements, and this would probably be about the average cost of that. So you can see the cost of the medication could potentially be lower in the US, unless you're getting the brand name. All right, so the total cost, if you're paying out of pocket in the U.S., could be somewhere around $4,109. Now, there are a couple things to take into consideration. That would be like an out-of-pocket cost. If you're paying with insurance, your out-of-pocket could be less, unless, of course, you haven't met your deductible yet, which means that in addition to paying your premiums, you still have to pay your deductible. Now, if your deductible is met, you might still have a copay. When I was talking to my friend about this, and she told me she had a colonoscopy done with full insurance, the testing alone cost her $1,100. And that's with full coverage. That's with paying her premiums every month. She still had to pay $1,100 out of pocket just for that test. That doesn't include any of the doctor visits, the consultations, the follow-up appointment. I did see that the cost for a colonoscopy at this place was 150 euros, which right now converts to $174.61. And another thing to take into consideration is some doctors, especially in smaller towns in the U.S., might not require the primary care appointment. If you live in a small town, you have a good relationship with your primary care doctor, you've been seeing him for decades, maybe you can just give him a call and say, hey, can I get a referral to a GI doctor? Maybe they'll do that. Where I lived, that wasn't the case. I had to go through this whole process. And also, if you're not using insurance and you are paying out of pocket, sometimes they can do sliding scales. Sometimes they won't make you do the 1 month of medication and the follow-up appointment. So you might not need all of these appointments. There's a lot of ways this price could be different. So I'm aware of all that. So those are just things to take into consideration. But overall, my price was very good. I actually opted out of the medication. I wanted to try, because she gave me so many recommendations on how to change my diet to treat the peptic ulcer. I figured I would just try that first. And if I don't have any luck, then I'll add the medication. So I actually opted out. So this was my total cost. Now, if you want to take into consideration the travel expenses that I had, we took a bus. Craig and I. Craig went with me, and it was 600 lek per person. Let's see I'm going to put that in euros, but we'll just see what that is. So it's about $13.98. And again, that's for 2 people. And that's going all the way from Pocredec to Tirana, which is about a 2.5-hour ride. And then we cabbed back. The cab took us all around the city and then back home for 80. Actually, he charged us less than that, but he undercharges. So we gave him about 80 euros, which right now converts to $93.18. So if you add in the travel expenses, I paid $585.69 in euros. That is 612 euros. I hope you found this video informative. If you did, please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Feel free to ask any questions that you have, and check back for more cost comparison videos. See you in the next one.